through how you've been spending part of your life?
Well, the first step is to prepare a financial order. Well, first of all, we had to go through and identify what exactly do we need. Some of the positions are benefit positions, some of the positions are tax positions, some of them are appeals positions. So we had to figure out exactly what we needed, and then prepare a financial order that the governor signed, I would say around the April 20th, although I don't have the exact date. So the financial order establishes the position. We also had to prepare what's called a functional job analysis. It's basically to write up what are the specs of the position, submit that to the Bureau of Human Resources so they do their review. Again, everybody was on board expediting this process, but still these are all the steps that we had to go through. So the Bureau of Human Resources looked at that, confirmed that we had the right job classifications. And then our staff in Human Resources have been working with us to create the job posting, which those should be going up any day at this point. And then we go through the interview process. It's a 14-day posting. We go through the interview process and select the candidates. So that's a very high level of what it takes to bring somebody on board. But the financial order and the FJA, the functional job analysis, are the steps that we wouldn't have had to gone through if we still had those vacant positions on the books.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Director Smith. I appreciate that. So is it fair to say then that the call center, the contractor, the call center contractor, was sort of a quick fix to get some people in an expedited fashion while you simultaneously went through these steps, or did these steps begin after that?
They were in parallel.
Okay, they were, so same time, simultaneously moving forward.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Senator Guerin and then Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I ask my question, I just want to skip back to Representative Doerr's question about how many people who applied the first week have not received benefits. I think that number far exceeds 19 from what I've been hearing from constituents. It's errors in the computer system and the inability to call back. And a member of my immediate family was laid off that first week. He has called every single day for hours and has not been able to get through to have that adjusted. There's some glitch on the computer related to him. And I have heard from many constituents who have been calling from that first week who have not been able to get through. So I'm sure I have talked to more than 19 people myself. So you multiply that over the state, that number has to be much greater for people who have been 7 weeks without a paycheck. Then on to my question. This summer, if we cancel the tourist season in Maine this summer, we're going to have hardly any summer workers, and they're big contributors to the unemployment fund. And so that's going to leave a big hole in that fund in the fall. I wondered if you could tell me how much you're spending a week from our state fund, when you think that'll run out. I understand that you can borrow from the feds, but in the long run, we're going to have to pay that back. And what is the plan to replenish that fund?
So, Senator Guerin, I don't have the numbers in front of me for the trust fund, but when we began a few weeks ago, Maine's trust fund was at roughly 15.8 months of benefits in the trust fund. And so we had a stable trust fund. The federal guidance is that you should have 12 months. Of course, no one ever anticipated the influx, the surge that we were seeing in claims. Some of the things that the actions that the legislature took in the Maine emergency legislation were actually helpful. For example, Maine removed the 1 week waiting period. Under the federal CARES Act, they are going to reimburse the state for any state that removed the 1 week waiting period. We will be reimbursed for that. Also for the pandemic unemployment, the federal the compensation program, federal pandemic unemployment compensation, the $600, as well as the extended benefit program, Those are all 100% federally funded. We began this with about $500 million in the trust fund. And I want to say that the state has been paying out about, I don't know, Deputy Commissioner, do you know, about like it ranging between 30 and I think maybe $59 million out of the trust fund at this point. I'm not sure.
I
But we
don't
can
have,
get those numbers for you.
yeah, I know the trust fund balance as of today is 378 million. We've been paying out 60 to 70 million a week. Most of that actually is federally funded. So we can get more details for you.
Of a breakdown of the federal and the state.
Yep.
I think that unlike some other states, we are not in imminent danger of needing to borrow. But we are also incredibly cognizant of the fact that we need to replenish any of the federal dollars that we are able to put back into the trust fund.
So just to clarify, Deputy Commissioner, you said 378 million in the trust fund now. There was just over $500 million in the trust fund. So there was just over 500 million in the trust fund on March 17th.
Correct.
So we've spent about 122 of state funds.
I don't think all of that is state funding, Senator.
Because we'll be reimbursed for some of it? Okay.
Yes.
I know, am I correct? There's an annual report that you present to our committee, and never did it become more important until this epic. But in looking at that annual report, am I correct that Maine had one of the highest ratings in terms of the health of our fund, and that relative to our neighbors in New Hampshire, for example, they started with 300 million in their fund, so about 200 million less than we started with on March 17th? And I'm using that date because that's when the legislature passed the emergency legislation.
I don't have that down in front of me, Senator, but that sounds accurate.
Okay. Senator Guerin.
And back to the question that was with the diminished people paying in from our huge summer influx of employees. When you come down to the part that is our part of the payment, not the federal, how are you planning to replenish that fund? What is the plan?
So, Senator, and as you know, the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund is paid for by contributions from employers on the first $12,000 of employee wages.
So are you inferring that will be an increase in the employer contribution to the fund?
I would, that's typically what happens is that that assessment is done every fall around September 30th, and we look at the amount that's in the trust fund, and taxes are adjusted at that point. For the last 4 years, the unemployment insurance taxes have been at Schedule A, which is the lowest schedule possible. I cannot imagine that taxes will stay at Schedule A during this crisis. And to give some sense of the scope of like, what does that look like for a typical employer? Taxes can be as low as 0 for some employers, and the maximum amount that employers were paying is roughly $648 for an employee for the year.
Thank you.
Great. Representative Sylvester, did you have a question about the tax issue? If not, Representative Bradstreet was next in the line. You defer to Representative Bradstreet and then back to you.
I will defer to the good representative.
Thank you. Looking at the call centers, is any consideration been given to, rather than hiring independent contractors, to repurpose state workers who are maybe not doing as much work as they used to do because of the situation and who are already on the state payroll?
Representative Bradstreet, thank you for asking that, and you sound a lot like my boss. Yes, we have looked at that, and in fact, we do have employees from the Department of Corrections who are working with us. We have folks from the Division of Administrative and Financial Services. We have a couple of people from workers' comp, I believe. We have people from Health and Human Services, from transportation, and DAFS has pulled together a list of a pool of people for us to pull from. So yes, we have been doing that, and yes, we continue to do that.
Representative Bradstreet, follow-up, yep.
So the need for a call center as an independent contractor would be minimized. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Representative Bradstreet, most of these folks are doing other tasks so some of it is data entry, some of it is program management of interfacing with systems that we need done. But I'd say at this point, the call center was the quickest way to get folks answering the phones and a system in place to handle that.
Okay, this is not a follow-up question. This is a pretty easy one, I think. I think you've probably already referred to this, but I just want to make sure I get it clear in my mind. For those people who have exhausted their UI benefits, will they be able to apply again if there are no jobs to go to? If so, then when? And will there be an extension of benefits for those people?
So, Representative Bradstreet, I think that's probably two questions. One is if people have exhausted their benefits right now, they would be enrolled in pandemic unemployment assistance. The state has a state extended benefit program that rarely triggers on, but we anticipate triggering onto that in the coming weeks. So that will be available, and then the federal pandemic extended benefit program is also going to be available, and our goal is to have it as seamless as possible for people and make sure that they are in the correct program, and the program that they're in may change depending on the circumstances, but there will be extended benefits for people who need them of 13 weeks.
13 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Sylvester.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, at the beginning of the pandemic, as we've talked about before, the design of unemployment was designed in the 30s. It left out an enormous amount of the new economy. And I think what a lot of folks don't understand is that how a lot of what the state is allowed to do is based on federal guidelines and federal rules and federal laws. And so as we look going forward, is there any discussion or movement that you've heard in terms of thinking into the future to include the new economy, gig workers, sole proprietors, independent contractors? How can we blend them into the UI system going forward? Is there any talk of that federally? And then what sort of leeway do we have as a state to begin to move in that direction? So I'm bringing you back big concept at the end of this. 3+ hours of hearing, I'm asking for big thinking. So
May not be the end.
So, Representative Sylvester, thank you for that question. And I think the fact that Congress, in a bipartisan fashion, created these new programs to include all of those people you were talking about, at least indicates that there is some willingness to look at those issues and a recognition that those people are falling through the cracks in the current system. So I think that there's definitely interest in making sure that the system is responsive to the current economy and the folks who need some sort of transition when work is not available.
Thank you.
I just want to circle back to Representative Bradstreet's question. He asked some excellent questions about staffing. And you said something earlier in the hearing, which was a little bit shocking, and that is that when you left, the department is about twice the size that it is today. That there were about 200 employees 10 years ago, and today there are about 100 employees. So, and 100 is higher than it was just a month ago. So my question is, have you made a systematic list of those 100 employees and asked people as a civic service to potentially either come back out of retirement, or if they're in another place in state government, to consider taking a temporary assignment? Because I think one of the real challenges is unemployment is so complicated. I think most people think you file and you're done and you're just going to get your benefit. But what you've explained is you file an initial claim. Then there's a check to see if what you say about your wages and your employment matches what your employer says. Then you have to file weekly certifications to verify that you're still willing and available to work and that you haven't found any yet, and reporting your wages. If you and your employer disagree, or if there's some glitch, then there's a fact finding or an adjudication, and that gets scheduled. And at this point, I'm hearing that they're scheduled out until June. Mm-hmm. And then once there's a fact finding and there's adjudication, you might be denied. And if you're denied, you can then appeal. And there's an appeals process that involves both you and your employer. So the system is highly complex. And so when you talk about hiring 138 new people, thank goodness, let's do it. Let's do it as quickly as possible. But there's a great deal of institutional knowledge, I suspect, in the 100 people that were there when you left 10 years ago who are not there now today. Have you explored that as an option? Because I have to say, those state workers who are working 6 and 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, not seeing their family, trying to work remotely, maybe their kids that are at home, or maybe their loved ones are in a nursing home or ailing. It's remarkable what they're doing, and that the fact that we're at half staff from where we are 10 years ago is, I think, shocking and awful.
So I think, Senator, the short answer is yes, we have reached out. Was it done in a systematic way through HR? No, we have not. We've been focused on trying to ramp up programs and get benefits out to people as quickly as possible.
All right, I know Representative Morris has another question. Representative Morris, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is actually on the pandemic unemployment system. I don't know if we're at that point yet, or.
Let's move into that. I think people are waiting for that. I know Representative Cuddy has some questions about that. So let's move in and talk about pandemic unemployment assistance for a little bit. Unless Senator Guerin, do you have one more question about benefits? Senator Guerin has a question about benefits, and then we'll go to PUA. Senator.
Thank you, Representative Morris, for letting me cut back in here on the benefit question. I have many different benefit questions that constituents have asked me. I put it out on Facebook if anybody had questions. I think this is kind of a general topic one that might hit a lot of people. This person earns his entire annual income over tourist season, which means he hasn't earned any money since October. When he applied for emergency unemployment, he was rejected because he hasn't worked since last fall. Is there a way to fix that glitch? And have you looked at what Vermont did? They saw last month they were going through this same kind of unemployment compensation system crisis, and their governor ordered the state treasurer to send out $1,200 checks to every person in his state who had tried but failed to get through their claim system. At any time, did you propose that to Governor Mills for those who are suffering with no pay all this time?
Senator, thank you. I have not proposed that to Governor Mills. I think that we have a responsibility to try to make sure that we get benefits out as quickly as possible and as accurately as possible. And that is what we are focused on doing. And comparing states gets tricky, because I would not want any other state to try to interpret what we're doing. So I do not want to comment on how other states are meeting the individual challenges that they're experiencing. All of the labor commissioners talk on a regular basis. And I believe that the situations that we're in as we all try to get benefits out to the people in our states are similar. The tactics that we use may be slightly different depending on our circumstances. In terms of the constituent that you mentioned who applied for pandemic unemployment assistance and was told that because they did not have any wages since October, I'm extremely concerned about that. And I want to make sure that that person has applied since last Friday, because based on the description that you gave, they should be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. They would not be eligible for state unemployment assistance. So if they applied prior to last Friday, May 1st, they would have been denied state unemployment benefits because the pandemic unemployment assistance program was not up. And I'd be happy to follow up on that with you, Senator.
Thank you.
I'm going to do a last call for benefits questions. I do have two. Some people are wanting to know, when they get those retroactive funds, particularly the folks who are self-employed, will that be in a lump sum, the monies that they were entitled to for April? Okay, so
Yes.
the answer is yes. Okay. And another question I'm getting, especially as we're opening the economy back up, some employers are using the PPP. This is on benefits. And some employers are bringing employees back under the PPP. They are concerned about their employees losing potential income, particularly if they're struggling to bring them back full time. Does partial unemployment and the PPP intersect at all, or is it a choice for employers to either bring people back or for people to continue to receive unemployment?
Thank you, Senator. It depends on the earnings, their wages, so, and what their weekly benefit is. But basically, if someone is back at work full time, they would not be unemployed and therefore not eligible for unemployment insurance. If they were back at work part time and the earnings, as Deputy Commissioner explained, were less than their weekly benefit amount would be, they would be eligible for partial unemployment benefits. The other program that many employers are using is a work share program. You know, probably a year ago, perhaps 3 employers were using that. As of earlier this week, there were 129 companies that were using work share. And this is a program where an employer can decide to lay off or reduce the hours of kind of everyone equally. And it's between 10% and 50%. You can't go below 50%. And then for that other 50, let's say it's 50%, you would get partial unemployment for a piece of that. And that's another program that I believe there are about 26 states that offer that program across the country. Maine is one of those 26 states. And that's a program where those unemployment benefits are also going to be federally funded. So I think that one of the things I'd like to see moving forward is for us to promote that more, because I think that's a great way for employers to be able to bring their employees back. It also eliminates the challenge that I've heard from some employers about that $600 benefit, because anyone on work share is also eligible for that benefit. Again, that $600 benefit is time limited. It began with the week ending April 4th, and it ends the week of July 25th.
Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Austin had a question before we get into the PUA about positions. Representative Austin.
Was Representative Morris going to go ahead, or was he the next section?
He wants to talk about the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program for the self-employed, the PUA, which we're going to go to shortly. So we're just wrapping up any questions about benefits or staffing. So you had a question about staffing, is that right? Positions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, we've heard quite a bit about the 100 positions that over time have been taken off from the role, I guess, staffing role. Can you remember at this point right now today, out of that 100, were a lot of those at the time vacant positions that weren't filled, or could some of those be a number within that? And then what about attrition or whatever? Can you break that down a little bit for us? Because that does seem like a lot to keep the whole department going. But if they were just some that I know during my first tenure, there were positions that were on the books but weren't filled. So I don't know if you can kind of break that out for us, might be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Representative. That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head. And I don't know if the Deputy Commissioner does, but I think that is the kind of information that we could provide to you later on, unless, Kim, do you have any idea?
I think we can certainly provide that information. There was never a layoff. So if you were asking, was there somebody in those positions and they were cut? I believe it was done through attrition. It wasn't 100 positions all at one time. This happened gradually over several biennia. And yeah, but we can certainly get that information.
Well, I would love that. I'm sure that everybody else listening, in the committee would like it too, because that sort of serves my memory that we did not cut positions, that a lot of them might have been people that left and then it just wasn't filled, or it wasn't necessary at the time, or there was a realignment of the department in that particular sector. So thank you very much.
Okay, I have one more benefits question that we wanted to ask, and then we're going to go into the PUA. And Representative Bradstreet has a benefits or staffing question as well. So I think the weekly certifications is something that's new to people who've never been on unemployment. I think you say you file for unemployment, and that's what people think filing for unemployment is. But then this idea that you need to weekly report whether you're willing and available to work is new for people who've never ever filed for unemployment. Do you know what percentage of approved claimants are successfully filing their weekly certifications, and what communications they get to remind them that they have to do that? And if they forget or they didn't know that they had to, are they able to go back retroactively and redo that if that was an error?
So thank you, Senator. Off the top of my head, I do not know a percentage. We look at the numbers of weekly certifications on a weekly basis, and we could probably make some sort of an estimate about that. But the weekly certification serves a critical role in a couple of ways. We remind people regularly now about filing weekly certifications in any Facebook posts that we do, or on the website, trying to remind people, because I agree, Senator, if people are not aware of this, it may seem odd. But the weekly certification not only talks about, are you able to work, are you available to work, and how you report wages if you have in fact done any work. It's also how we are able to verify whether or not you're complying with the requirements to do work search, although work search has been waived temporarily during this emergency.
Thank you. Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you. Actually have maybe several questions.
But not about pandemic, right?
No,
there are a bunch of people that have questions about the pandemic.
Right, this is about benefits.
Okay.
This first one seems a little bit unusual, but given the way things are working, maybe it's not that uncommon, and we may be something we want to look at going ahead. And if someone who is initially applies for unemployment compensation, but then finds that he no longer needs to continue with it because his employer has now applied for and been approved under PPP, how can he get out of the system? Staying in the system, even though he is now working and does not need or want to be in, is jeopardizing the employer's status with PPP and may be required to pay back those funds. And he said the Department of Labor will not let him cancel his claim.
So, thank you, Representative Bradstreet. That is an interesting twist. The weekly claim, when someone stops, and I just realized I didn't answer the second part of Senator Bellows' question. The weekly claim, when you stop filing it, that means that you go to an inactive state, and you are able to skip 2 weekly claims before you are declared inactive. That does not mean that you're still collecting benefits, but let's say you go back, you work for your employer, you're receiving your wages, and something unforeseen happens, and that employer has to lay you off again. Rather than having to start the process from the beginning, you can reactivate your claim if it's within the benefit year. And a benefit year is determined from the first date that you filed your initial claim through the next year. So there's nothing that would jeopardize that employer's ability to get that PPP loan if that employee has an active claim, as long as they're not continuing to file weekly certifications, and as long as they're not fraudulently collecting benefits.
Okay, thank you. And the next
Do
question.
you have a follow-up on that? Okay.
Not really follow-up. What accommodations are being made for direct reimbursement employers, towns, I'm primarily concerned about?
So thank you, Representative Bradstreet. That's actually an excellent question. As you probably know, unemployment insurance, as we've said before, that is paid for by a tax on employers on the first $6,000 of wages. There are groups of organizations or businesses that have the option of being direct reimbursable. So what that means is that they do not pay into the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. However, their employees are covered by unemployment insurance if they lose their job through no fault of their own and they meet the other criteria. And those employers elect to pay for whatever the cost is for those employees. And so the employees are paid out of the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, and then those employers are billed. Congress took action to reimburse direct reimbursable employers for 50% of those costs. So rather than being responsible for paying 100% of the benefits, they are only going to be responsible for 50% of the benefits. We are.
Okay, that's a federal program that's doing that then.
Yes.
Okay, I do have just one more question.
As long as it's, I know there's a queue. Representative Carney has a question about benefits, and then maybe circle back to you and then get to the folks on PUA.
Okay.
Okay.
Does the department have any type of way of expediting claims for people in a certain category or from a specific employer or type of employer? The reason I'm asking that is I had someone who notified me that a person from a particular company, when they found out where he worked, they sped the application right through, and he went through with virtually no waiting at all. So I'm just wondering if there is a special designation for any of these people.
So I touched on this a little bit earlier, Representative Bradstreet, and thank you for bringing it up so that I can explain it hopefully a little bit clearer. So normally, if there is any sort of a large plant closing, we have our team from the Bureau of Employment Services, our rapid response team, and they would work with the employer. We have adapted that process during this situation so that if we hear that an employer is laying off a group of workers, we will work with them, the employer, to gather the information up front. And if the employer is willing to provide that on a spreadsheet, we can quickly go through the process. And we have offered that to any employer that has reached out to us. It works for the employer because it's less paperwork for them, and it works for the employees because the process is much quicker. We can immediately verify the reason for separation because the employer is telling us that right up front, as well as the wages because the employer is providing that information to us in a simple document.
So I think I have one last question on benefits, and then we really want to spend some time on pandemic unemployment assistance because we've just heard so much recently from the self-employed or those who weren't previously monetarily eligible. Just to return to the weekly certs for a minute, it makes me, that conversation with Representative Bradstreet made me realize I have a number of constituents who are getting the inactive claims message. Is it possible to go back and look at those inactive claims? I mean, first, would it just be possible to start sending a weekly email to everyone in the system? If you're still unemployed, remember to file a weekly certification. Because the Facebook message is certainly helpful for some, but there are people in my life, I mean, my father's not unemployed, but he's never been on Facebook and is never going to be. So I just think that, the department has everyone's emails. If we could send an email once a week that says, if you're still unemployed, file your weekly certification, that might be a real help to people. And could we go back potentially and look at some of those inactive claims just to test or maybe send them an email? Because that's definitely a complaint that I've been receiving. Is it possible that the inactive claim might just be that they failed to file their weekly certs?
It is, Senator, yes, it is very possible that they failed to file their weekly certs. And, we'll consider emails.
So if someone has an inactive claim, they need to reactivate their claim and then they could go back and do those weekly certifications under weekly certifications.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. We spent a lot of time on a lot of issues, but we really do want to take some time with pandemic unemployment assistance. Representative Morris, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, I guess I'll start my questioning. I received an email this morning before I came here, and I haven't had a chance to reach out to the constituent as yet, and I'm hoping you can shed some light on his story. What he's saying to me is he was told to file a claim 2 weeks before May 1st because the money became available, and he filed the claim. And after 3 days of trying to talk to someone about it, he was told nothing can be done because he filed that claim. And they also told him that the claim, that had he not filed that claim, he would be all set now. And when he was asked how long, he was put on hold. And they have no idea how long he's going to have to wait. So I don't know if you can shed some light on that situation. I mean, about why he was told to file 2 weeks ago if it wasn't available until May 1st.
Representative, I can't answer that. I don't know if he is self-employed. We've been trying to encourage people, if they're self-employed, to not apply until this was available. However, if he has already applied, I would guess, but again, without knowing the specific facts, it's hard to, make an accurate prediction. But if he truly is self-employed, he will be denied unemployment benefits because we're not going to have wages for him And then he should roll over into pandemic unemployment assistance.
Do you know approximately how long he'll have to wait or anybody, let's take it abstract, anybody in that situation would have to wait from this to roll over because I think the confusion was that they were told the money was available 2 weeks ago, in this system wasn't ready to roll until last Friday.
So, Representative, thank you. And this is very confusing, and perhaps what you can do. I think this gets back to your question about, can we do some sort of constituent support here? Because I think for me to even begin to dig into this, I'm going to need more information. The first thing that crosses my mind is, I don't know who told him that money was available, or what that means, or whether or not he filed an application and it appeared that he was monetarily eligible. I mean, it's a lot of unknowns there, Representative, but let's try to talk.
No, I appreciate that. We can do that. I guess, again, the question though more now is those folks that may have, such as him, may have jumped the gun and filed earlier, because I understand it, confusion can happen.
Right.
How long are they going to have to wait, because obviously they're going to be denied, but how long for it to roll over? And I guess, are those people going to are you asking them to file a new claim, a second claim again to make sure, or?
Yeah, our goal, and again, I'm saying no, and I can see the deputy shaking her head saying no. Our intent is not to do that. We do not want people to have to refile. What is, every situation is different though, so we would have to see what that particular person did. But
Okay.
In the abstract, if people erroneously filed, they will be denied and it will be rolled over, and we're looking to take much of that action later this week.
How many claims are in the system right now?
So when you say how many claims are in the system, there are.
In the unemployment system.
I don't have numbers on pandemic unemployment assistance. We are only able to release weekly claims information on Thursdays at 8:30, because that is considered sensitive economic data, and based on the agreement that we have with the U.S. Department of Labor, no state is allowed to release that information until 8:30 a.m. on Thursdays. So tomorrow I will be able to give you weekly claims data for last week, and that will include pandemic unemployment assistance numbers from Friday and Saturday. Those will be included in the weekly numbers.
Okay.
So we have Representative Rikerson, then Representative Cuddy, then Representative Carney, then Representative Senator Guerin. So Representative Rikerson, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering, an analogous situation was when they rolled out the Affordable Care Act, where there was a whole system of navigators to assist people in their in a totally new system, something that had never been created before. So it's kind of similar to the PUA, I think. I'm wondering if there's a way that we can employ the, say, community action programs or some kind of community programs that would assist in navigating this system that we ourselves, even though we're delving into it, are still confused about. So that's basically my question.
Okay, so Representative, we are thinking along similar lines. There is a, who knows how far we'll get with this, but there is a U.S. Department of Labor dislocated worker grant that we either applied for yesterday or we are applying for today, and requesting, we're thinking of it as like a peer-to-peer kind of navigator to help through this system.
Great. Representative Cuddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Fortman, first off, thank you for being here for what has turned into a relatively long day, and thank you for your attention to detail and your answers, and for your staff also for being here as well. So my question is around the PUA program, and it sort of rests around the idea that the administration inherited sort of a lower number of workers, and we clearly couldn't handle the historic, and I want to emphasize historic, onslaught of regular UI claims. We have thousands of people who are still waiting, and we've talked about some of the ways in which you guys are getting at those folks now and trying to help them out. And the feds then put in place, this new PUA program, and I'm grateful that they did, because as we've discussed, the system hasn't kept up with the economy, and this is sort of a quick way that the feds tried to make something work. But that also adds on to DOL this new level of complexity and a new layer, as well as an entirely new cohort of people that we don't typically think of as being able to claim unemployment. So we already have this onslaught of cases that we've had difficulty keeping up with, because it is, as I said, completely historic. And then we have this new cohort of people and an entirely new system to deal with it. So knowing this was coming along, and knowing that, obviously you had to get the guidance from the federal government before you could really move on it, but how are we going to be able to continue to do this in an orderly fashion? Let me step back a second. What do we do to put it together so that you could do this in an orderly fashion, because you've already started accepting the applications? And how are we going to keep this from just completely overwhelming the system?
So excellent questions, Representative Cuddy. I think that one of the things that we are doing is doing it in a two-step process. So the first thing that we did was on May 1st begin accepting the applications and begin paying benefits. So by the end of this week, many people will begin to receive some of the pandemic unemployment assistance benefits. We are not requiring a two-step application process that some other states are. We are also putting in place, by the end of the month, a system to upload the tax documents that will be required to verify the earnings for self-employed people. We are doing this very deliberately so that it is an automated process for the vast majority of people. And that was one of the steps that we're taking that is a little bit different than some of the other states. Our goal is to have that process automated so that it does not require as much human intervention, and therefore winnow down the numbers of people that we have to have the kinds of complicated interactions with that can occur.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the I attended one of the online tutorials you did regarding PUA, and if I remember correctly, if somebody applies, a sole proprietor applies for PUA, they're going to automatically just begin receiving a set amount. I think it was like $172 a week.
Exactly. Yep.
In addition, the $600 federal dollars they'd be receiving, and then eventually you will have them upload these financial documents through this hopefully automated system, and that will determine whether or not they actually qualify for a higher level of benefit. And if I remember correctly, that 172 was a federally mandated number. You can't go below that if you're a sole proprietor. Is that correct?
That is the, and it's not the 172. It's the 1/2 of the weekly benefit, of the average weekly benefit. So that that amount varies from state to state, but the formula is 1/2 of your state's average weekly benefit.
Okay. And so the documents do not need to be uploaded yet, even if they applied on Friday, and you will let people know when that needs to happen.
That is correct. And we will be doing that through email.
Okay. And
again, Representative, getting back to your point about, what are you doing to try to like throttle the load, that we would be asking people to provide that information in chunks.
Mhm.
So that we're not sending it out on, Monday and saying by 5 o'clock tonight, we need everything from everyone.
Right. And the last question I had over PUA was the money going out for PUA, does some of that come from our trust fund, or is that all federal money?
All federal money. The
Okay,
money for PUA is all federal. The money for the $600 is all federal, and the extended benefit program, the federal extended benefit program, is all federal. In addition, the 50%, 50% of the direct reimbursable will be federal, and the 1 week waiting period that the Maine legislature agreed to eliminate during this time frame will also be federal.
Great, thank you for that.
Representative Carney, you had some questions about PUA, and then Senator Guerin.
I did, and thank you, Madam Chair. And Commissioner Fortman, I just want to let you know how impressed I am with the breadth and detail of the information you're providing. It's very impressive. And I just wanted to point out something that I think is a really fabulous example of the work that your department is doing on the PUA. There's this handout that I printed off the website. I don't know if you can see it, but it's just a really, really clear graphic that explains to people who is eligible for PUA. And I think that, this heading in this direction is a really fabulous way to facilitate people getting benefits. It's basically just a list of all of the scenarios that might apply to somebody and whether or not they are covered by the PUA program and should apply. And my question to you is, if for the PUA in particular, if people are in doubt as to whether or not they might be eligible, should they go ahead and apply?
Definitely. And we say that, thank you, Representative Carney. I mean, we tell anyone who thinks that they're eligible for unemployment benefits to apply. And for PUA, because it is covering such a wide swath of folks, they should, if they believe that they're eligible and they have had some connection to the workforce, they should definitely be applying.
Thank you.
So Senator Guerin, you have a question. I just want to interject. I do think that there's some pieces like that that are very helpful, but I think the internal communications within the system, and we've already spoken about the messages that say you are entitled to $0 within the system, that are creating such anxiety for people. And I guess one of the questions I have is, do department staff have the ability to go into the system itself, the Reemploy Me, which we contracted out 2 years ago? Do department staff have that ability to go into that system and change some of what is said on those screens so it doesn't generate the panic and anxiety of you're entitled to $0? Because I think that's such a clear contrast. You've got this great checklist. It's written in easily understood terms that Representative Carney downloaded from the website, but the website is not actually connected to the Reemploy Me system that you actually have to use to get your benefits. And so when you're inside that system and you get these messages that are really confusing and also seemingly contradict common sense, I think it's only natural that people start hitting those phones and you get 1,800 calls on a Monday and most of those people can't get through. So is that something the department has the ability to do?
So, Senator, our relationship with the contractor is a partnership. So we work in in a team with them. So it's not as though there's a group that there's a vendor off somewhere doing something, and then we have our staff over here. There is a coordinated team made up of Department of Labor subject matter experts and the technical folks in the vendor. But changing the language is something that requires everyone to come together to make those changes. And at this point, we have been focused on bringing up the new federal programs and have not diverted the energy to working on these other enhancements that we agree would be good to have.
Forgive me, maybe I'm not being clear enough, but you know, I in my day job, I run a nonprofit. I don't do the software, the website programming, but I can go in and change the language on any page on my site and say, you know what, that is not appropriate. I want to change it to say this. Does the department, like, does your amazing communications person have the ability to log in on the back end and just change some words to simplify the language, or change the message from "you're entitled to $0" to "thank you for submitting your initial claim. It has been received. You will hear from us in 10 to 14 days"?
No, that is not something that we have the capacity to do. It's part of the, I mean, we can do that on our website, but not as part of the reemploy me system.
Senator Guerin, and I just say, if there was a way to change that, I think that could be huge, because I think communications is a big piece of that, because people are taking at face value the information that they're receiving, and they don't know that, you know, the message that they're receiving, you know, it's like, don't worry, the bad news is good news, but that's very counterintuitive.
Right.
Senator Guerin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I absolutely agree with Senator Bellows that those messages drive people to the phone that are already backed up by the unemployment. So it's just exacerbating that problem. So if we could get some screen changes, that certainly would be helpful. Commissioner Fortman, you've been in this role before, and that's helpful. And it's not your first implementation of a program, I'm sure. So I wondered, in those past implementations, did you seek input from the governor, the president of the Senate, or the Speaker of the House? And in developing this pandemic unemployment assistance program, how did the information flow from the vendor to your department to the governor's office of how that it was going to be set up?
So, Senator, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program is a federal program, so our interactions were primarily with the U.S. Department of Labor.
And before implementation, was there any coordination with the governor, the speaker, or the president of the Senate?
I mean, the governor's office, of course, was updated on a regular basis about our progress, but there was, I'm unclear about what you mean by coordination, Senator. Our task was to implement it as quickly as possible within the constraints of the federal law.
I think I'm trying to get at the implementation, the question Senator Bellows had of how the screens looked and how that the rollout was coordinated with the unemployment, knowing that there would be glitches and it would just add to those people who had already been in there for 7 weeks trying to get their payments.
Again, I'm trying to understand the question. I think the direction that we had was to implement pandemic unemployment assistance as quickly as possible, as accurately as possible, within existing federal guidelines. And that is what we did. And we were using the existing Reemploy Me system because that system was structurally sound, and that seemed to be the quickest way to get money into the hands of the Maine people who desperately needed it.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from members of the committee about the PUA? I have a couple, but I want to, Representative Sylvester.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to touch on some seasonal workers that we haven't talked about. Representative Rikerson talked about agricultural workers, but we have college students who are all finishing up. Many of them are home but online, finishing up their semesters, who normally have regular employment in the summer. Many at the same employer, recurring summer after summer, who are counting on that money for tuition. And so I wanted to touch on what is available for college students who wouldn't necessarily normally have the, wouldn't qualify for the regular unemployment system, but what is their ability to qualify under any of the other federal programs, whether PUA or other programs?
Representative, the connection needs to be related to COVID-19. So if you traditionally work at I don't know, an ice cream shop or a lawn care company, and for COVID-19 related reasons, that company is not going to hire you, and you can document that with a letter from that company, that is something we would look at. But this is for people who have two things: a connection to the workforce. So if you've never worked before and you have no connection to the workforce, this is still an unemployment program. However, if, as you laid out, there is, it has already been a job offer. Maybe when you were home over, the winter break, you spoke to someone and they said, yes, I can't wait to see you on May 31st. And you've got that documentation, that would be, but the business is not opening or not hiring, that would be something that we would look at as someone being potentially eligible for PUA.
So for example, I mean, I have employees in my business who've worked for me 6 years in a row, who come back every year, and have their W-2s from year after year. And my understanding is, and I wanted to give a chance on this too, is it's for seasonal workers that you can use 2018 if you haven't filed 2019. I wanted to make sure that folks knew that. But that sort of folks can get a letter from an employer and send that into you, and that would, yeah, okay. That's because I've had a lot of students reach out about who filed and got an ineligible, and so that's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we would be reaching out to you as the employer to verify that at some point.
I look forward to it.
Other questions from members of the committee? Anyone on PUA? I've got a couple, but I want to give members of the committee the opportunity to talk first. Anyone online? I'm seeing shaking heads. I just want to go back to the online portal, because I think there are problems on the front end with the communications with Reemploy Me. And I hear you that this is a partnership and that structurally you think the system is sound. And I trust that structurally it may be, but the usability of it raises some grave concerns. And I hope you can work with the vendor. This has been a problem since the beginning, but on some of the ability of the Maine Department of Labor to go in and make some common sense changes to the language within the portal. But I have a few concerns about the back end as well. I understand that your department is having to go back in and manually backdate the PUA claims for the businesses. Are there other are you having system slowdowns or system challenges with your employees able to access the system on the back end besides the electricity, which is understandable? But are there elements of being able to work on the system by the employees that are contributing to some of the anxiety and some of the delays in accessing benefits?
That's not an issue that's been raised with me, Senator, but I will check with staff.
Okay. I've heard reports of some lag times and just some real challenges from some staff. So I think that's worth it. Senator Guerin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just another thing along that line. This is from a Facebook post yesterday that somebody posted, and I think it shows some of the total confusion on the online system. Attention self-employed. If you are self-employed and have no wages with an employer in the calendar year 2019 or 2020, you must select no for question 4. Do not select a state on question 5. To deselect a state, double-click on your selection to remove it. It's just all so complicated that people are overwhelmed with trying to get through, and then the message comes back, not approved, so they head for the phone. So we just desperately need to streamline that system and make it common sense. Like, couldn't we have it select a state? Because this is Maine. So to just take out some of the extra verbiage that is confusing people.
Thank you, Senator. And yes, I think that anything we can do to make it easier for people to understand will not only reduce their frustration and, as you said, reduce calls. And we are open to doing that as quickly as we can within the constraints of that we're operating in.
Representative Carney, you have a follow-up?
I do, and it's on the same questions that you and Senator Guerin were asking. Commissioner Fortman, are there barriers to working with the company, I guess it's called Reemploy USA, that are preventing us from going into the back of the system, so to speak, to make those changes?
Representative Carney, no, thank you for the question. There are no barriers to working with them on that. It's just the sheer volume of what we're trying to accomplish. And so my priority is, and I think I had said it a while ago when we were talking about how to approach this, we did some things about eliminating, getting out the denials to people, as well as approving a bunch of changes. I made that decision, but that we've got a core group of people, including with the vendor that we're working with, who are working on these issues. So if I pull them off working on PUA to work on this other thing that I also thought was really important, which was to clear up roughly 12,000 claims, it's all a matter of where are you focusing your resources? And my focus has been, what do we need to do that will stand up these new programs so that people will get the benefits as quickly as possible? And it was not done. I mean, if we had 6 months to think about this, we would be doing, more, bring in users and test some of this, and how does this messaging work? We have not had that time. And so in the absence of that time, what I have been focused on is, what do we need to do to get benefits to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible? And those were the decisions that I made.
Yeah, I actually, the basic question is more of a concern that something that you're hearing back from Employee USA.
So Representative Carney, there's something wrong with your internet. We can't hear you. If you want to type your question in the chat, then we could verbalize it for you, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Try again. Sure. Yep.
Okay. No, my question really had to do with whether Reemploy USA, the kind of parent company for the Reemploy Me system, was difficult for you to work with for reasons that didn't have to do with our department, but that had to do with their responsiveness.
No.
Okay.
That has not been my experience, Representative Carney. They have been very responsive to our needs as we've been working through this.
And then just one final question. Are you able to sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel where you're going to be able to go in and make those changes?
I would hope that, once we get the state extended benefit program up, when we get the step 2 in PUA, where we're uploading the data, and when we get the federal pandemic, the benefit program up, that we'll have some breathing space. We may have a little between now and then, but again, we still have significant chunks of work to do to get those other programs up. And we are also working very, very hard to make sure that we continue to get at least at that 70% and increase it higher to 70% of people. Our goal is 100% of the people receiving benefits as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Representative Rikerson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of usability, I'm just wondering, the internet is such a democratic, small d process that I think that maybe just like a dedicated email address for suggestions, not complaints. You may get, 1,000 complaints, but you might get 2 good suggestions on how the website could be improved and the process can be improved. And now that you have all these self-employed gig workers applying through PUA, you might actually get some good input from those people. So I'm just throwing that out to see if that's possible.
Yeah, thank you, Representative. And actually, I think we did get one of those emails. I don't even know what day today is. I guess it's Wednesday, maybe on Monday. That was funneled through a representative, and there was actually someone who had applied and had some really good suggestions along the lines that you're talking about. So I think you're right. The more people who use it, probably, this is not how we would design to get user feedback, but I think that we will be, and we should be using whatever information we get.
Well, pretty easy to set up a dedicated email address to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Garing, you had a PUA question?
Yes, thank you. In the CDC briefing today, the governor was responding to questions about the system failures that we had been asking. They were asking her about that. And she said that the state has spent millions trying to fix the system and it's still not working correctly. And they used 100 contractors, which I'm sure must have not been the actual number. Can you give some clarity to that? How much has been spent? How many vendors you have used? You have contractors you have had look at the system?
I'm sorry, Senator. I think I was with you during that briefing, and I can't comment on it.
You don't know how many people have worked on it or how much money has been spent on trying to fix the system in the Department of Labor?
I don't know what system we're talking about trying to fix, Senator.
The online.
We have not contracted with anyone to fix the system. I'm not sure if this was in reference to when the unemployment insurance program was created back in 2017. We are a part of a consortium. There was roughly $92 million of federal funds that were used at that time. But again, I'm not sure. I frankly, I don't have the context, Senator, so I am not sure what was said.
And point of
Thank
order,
you.
I don't think we can ask her to comment on something that's been said in a different meeting when she literally was right here with us.
So what I am asking is, how much has the state spent in trying to fix the online and phone systems so far?
So I can look at what, again, I need to understand the fix. So I mean, I can tell you we have a contract with the contractor that has been in place since 2017, but it's unclear to me whether that's the question that you're asking.
Okay, thank you.
So we have, I have a constituent last night who contacted me and said, I've been scheduled for fact finding on June 8th. And we're hearing from a number of people who think that they're applying for the PUA, or there were some people who had filed, who were self-employed, who'd been scheduled for fact findings last week. And on the day of their fact finding actually didn't receive a call. And now we're hearing from fact findings that are scheduled out until June. One, are there more adjudicators to do the fact finding being hired? Because that definitely seems to be a challenge to tell someone. This woman who called me last night, she and her husband are both fairly low wage workers, and the restaurant he works at is closed and does not appear to be reopening, and they're just desperate for help. So do you have a sense of whether you have enough adjudicators, whether you're hiring more adjudicators, and if people didn't receive a call on their day of their fact finding, is that something that they can elevate to their elected representative that we can elevate to you?
Please, Senator, I'll answer the last part of your question first. Yes, please elevate that to me. And yes, we are hiring more adjudicators as part of that 138 positions that we're looking at. As you laid out very clearly, unemployment insurance is not a fill out an application and receive a check. It's multi-stage with appeal rights throughout the process. And we do know that that filing an initial claim is just step one. And we need to make sure as we move forward in this process that we are building in the skill sets that we need.
I have a couple of other questions that are off of PUA to just finish up. Do any other committee members want to have any questions about PUA? Okay, so one of the things that we've been encouraged to do, if constituents can't reach anyone on the phone, to go on the Department of Labor's website, use the Contact Us form, click unemployment, and submit an online message. I know a few weeks ago when you were doing the weekly briefings, the response time for those online messages was 7 days. Has that shortened? We were advised earlier this week that there was an indication that it might have been shortened to 36 hours. One constituent said, I'm just very skeptical of that. Do you have any sense of what the average response time is in the online messaging portal? And is this still the best way for a constituent to just at least stake their claim or state their problem if they're having a difficult time reaching someone on the phones?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, the online messaging portal is the best way to document what the problem is. We have career center staff who go through the customer messaging portal every day and work on that. Anytime someone is not on the phone, so for example, on Saturdays when we're working, that's one of the tasks that we're engaged in. But I would say that it is much closer to 2 weeks before someone is getting back to someone through that messaging portal, although we are, again, trying to clear out as many groups of those as possible. And one of the things that we have seen is that due to the frustration, due to people just wanting answers that frequently when we resolve one of those issues, we're also looking to see if that person has entered something more than once. And we frequently are able to close out a number of those customer messaging portal messages. We are also doing a check back and forth and building this into the system so that if you talk to someone, they're also trying to check to see if they have a message in the portal to shorten down those lists and close that all out at the same time.
We talked a lot about the portal. What if someone doesn't have internet? What if they don't have email? What if they don't have internet? I know the phones are overwhelmed. Is there something that we can do for people who are stuck in that digital divide?
I'm open to your suggestions, Senator. I think that those are very likely the people that we need to make sure are elevated through legislators directly to us, so that we can handle that.
Any other questions from members of the committee before we move into next steps? A senator asked me to just say, big picture, everyone that filed, there are 3,000 people that filed last Friday. There's a lot of small self-employed business owners who are just feeling a tremendous sense of anxiety. Is there any affirmative message about when they'll start receiving their funds? And, is there a sense that some of those PUA people will start receiving funds this week?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and that, Senator, that's what we've been saying from the beginning, is that we anticipate that people will be receiving their pandemic unemployment assistance within 7 days of filing their certifications.
Great. Any other, so I think we had a couple questions about next steps. Any other last questions that people wanted to ask? Senator Garin, did you have anything else that you wanted to ask before we go into next steps? No. Anyone online? The chair invites you to speak if you want to. I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads. Okay, so we did just want to talk a little bit about next steps. Is there, from your department's perspective, we are doing our very best to respond to constituent concerns, to triage, as it were, to answer these questions when we have the answers. Do you need us to change statutes or laws? Do you need more funding from us? Is there anything that we can do to help you in addition to the work that we're doing in terms of serving our constituents and helping triage some of the challenges our constituents are having and help educate them about how the system works?
So, Senator, I think that, Representative Sylvester started laying out some ideas a little while ago about whether or not the unemployment insurance system as it is currently constructed continues to meet the needs of today's workforce. I think that is a conversation that we should have when we get to the other side of this, because it's obvious that if Congress has to create a brand new freestanding program to cover the people who so desperately need benefits right now, that the coverage of unemployment insurance as constructed right now does not meet the needs of today's workforce. Also, there would need to be considerations about if this is a social insurance program, which unemployment insurance is, then how do you fund a program like that when you're trying to bring in a broader group of people? I think that's a reasonable question to try to figure out. And I think that from today's conversation, communication. I don't know of anyone who works in any organization anywhere who says communication is perfect and there's no need to improve it. I think that we have a challenge with our communication and that we need to work on resolving that. And then the other thing is education. You know, when this started almost 7 weeks ago, we were flooded initially by calls, by applications from people who did not understand anything about unemployment insurance. There were lots of misconceptions, and I think, Senator, you laid out a lot of those. You know, that it is a two-party process, that it is a federal-state partnership, that it is not just I'm out of work and therefore I receive benefits. So I think that the more education we can do, the clearer that communication can be, the better off we will be. And the other thing that we did not talk about at all today is recipiency. That was another issue we had started looking at before the pandemic hit. And that is a requirement, which I was happy to see in the federal programs, that we are instructed to look at what is the recipiency rate in unemployment insurance. And basically what that means is if you have workers who have lost their jobs, how many of them know about unemployment, how many of them apply for unemployment insurance, and then how many of them are actually covered by unemployment insurance in each of the states. And I believe in the past, Maine has been in about the middle of the pack. But again, I couldn't provide an exact place for us, but I think those are the kinds of issues that we need to be looking at moving forward.
Thank you, Senator Guerin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing I wondered if you would start thinking about and talking with the governor about is the liability of an employer if an employee becomes sick and sues them. I'd like to see something about, you know, the employer being held harmless unless an employee can prove that they got sick at work due to gross negligence. You know, so I was wondering if the department could look into possibly publishing some sort of rule or statement related to that.
I think that's a policy conversation in this committee probably for next year, because I had an employee call me yesterday, and they are a frontline worker and their employer said they couldn't wear a mask because it would send the wrong message. I'm sending them a copy of the governor's executive order that says everyone has the right to wear a face covering. But this is a perfect example of, you know, that tension, and it's a mutual responsibility. Employees have a responsibility to their employers, but employers to the responsibility. This hearing's about unemployment, so I think we can have a lively conversation, but I
would say that this is about next steps, and I think that is a future step we need to look at. If an employer is telling an employee they can't wear a mask, maybe that would fall in the gross negligence category. But and the other thing I wanted to mention, which I am sure Senator Bellows will have an opinion on, is I think another thing that we should be looking at and the department should be recommending is a freezing of the minimum wage increase that is due next January, because we know employers are barely hanging on. Many are already going out of business. So that's another question I'm sure would be controversial.
Just as a reminder, unfortunately, minimum wage, or fortunately, minimum wage is tied to the rate of inflation next January. So there are no more dollar increases. It will, and I don't see an inflationary pressure in the current recession that we're experiencing that may be a depression.
Yes, so perhaps it would be good time to realize that policy going forward isn't the best.
So one of the things that I'd like, Commissioner, is really I think we really need to continue to think collaboratively about what the state can do to modernize the unemployment insurance program, to really better align it with its underlying purpose and modernize technology, but also the recognize the changes that are happening in our society and our workforce, how people work, and how mobile, how many people who are self-employed or gig workers or have multiple jobs. I think all of those points that you've raised are a really important piece of this conversation. I really appreciate, I just want to say one more time on behalf of the entire committee, those state workers who are processing all of these claims, my understanding is we've received more claims in the last 5 weeks than we have in years. There's no precedent for it. To go from 600 claims to over 20,000 claims, to have processed at this point over 70,000 claims in such a short time and paid out over $200 million in benefits to our friends and neighbors is really, really remarkable. And to every one of your employees who's working 12-hour days, 6 or 7 days a week, and yourself as well, I think we just want to say thank you for being here with us today. And we all know this needs to be fixed. We need to do better, but we want to recognize your achievement and and how hard you've worked. So, Representative Sylvester, you had something, and Representative Bradstreet?
I just wanted to say, Commissioner, again, thank you for being here. I hope you will extend on our behalf, as Senator Bellows said, just the heroic work that the state workers who have come from all departments to put hands together to make sure that the claims that have gone through get through, and that people's calls are answered as you've been able. And we appreciate to hear today about the staffing increases and that so many people can expect to see the federal programs rolling out in the short term. And I guess what I would like to say is, what my caucus hears me say all the time is that the services that you provide have been understaffed for years. And the programs that you provide, educating employers, keeping employees safe, and providing a safety net for the unemployed, are some of the most crucial programs in the state. And so what I am hoping is that coming out of this crisis in next steps, that we will see the value of those programs, that we will staff those programs appropriately, that we will have the resources in place so that when Mainers are in need, whether that's an employer needing an education, or it's an employee needing to make sure that their workplace is safe, or whether it's a Mainer in a crisis situation in their lives, that the DOL will be there, will be resourced, will be staffed, and that you have everything you need to make sure that happens. And I appreciate you being here today.
Representative Bradstreet, you had a comment about next steps?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you for being here. You oversee a department that is being fed a lot of people, which points to the underlying issues that we have in here, and that's the state of Maine's economy. And I would hope that you would urge the governor to open the lines of communication so that we can work on all these issues collaboratively. We'll get a lot more done together than we do separately. We're in this together. It's got to be more than a platitude. And I hope that we can have those lines of communication open for the benefit of all Mainers. Thank you. Appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, Representative Rikerson. Representative Rikerson.
Thank you.
And if there's anyone else online, we
I wanted
don't
to thank all the state workers who've been working so hard. That's all.
Great. Representative Cuddy. Representative Cuddy, did you want to say anything? Oh, he froze. Representative Carney.
Yeah, I just want to echo the thanks to all of the state workers who have gotten so many benefits to the people of Maine, and especially for the kindness and how they handle the people who are so anxious and stressed when they call in.
Senator Guerin.
Well, I will close as I had opened, thanking you for your hard work. And I also want to send out an apology to the people of the state of Maine for the lack of response in their time of need. I sincerely, my heart breaks for them. I know when you were talking about the dedication of your employers before, it brought tears to your eyes, Commissioner Fortman. It is brought tears to my eyes. I have talked with people on the phone who were crying and desperate because they have no income. So thank you for getting right on this and seeing what we can do to get those checks out to the people who need them.
Thank you.
Representative Morris. Okay. Is there anyone else online that had wanted to say anything? Okay.
I would love to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Bellows. I just want to give a shout out to our state employees, having been a state employee for almost 30 years. It's been very difficult for them. And I also want to give a shout out to all the small businesses. I grew up in a small business. It's a difficult time. It's a time that we have never been through before. But I think if we work together, we will get through this. Thank you. And thank you to all the committee members.
Thank you. There were about 200 people that stayed with us on the live feed for all about this time. And I think it's a testament to what Senator Guerin and Representative Bradstreet said earlier, that there are people in need and we all have to work together to make this work. It's unacceptable that people have gone so long without the support that they need. We know they're having a hard time meeting their bills, buying groceries for their family, and we are all in this together. It needs to be collaborative, and let's continue to work hard on this, and let's make sure the lines of communication are open between the executive branch and legislators so that we can elevate those challenges if someone is completely shut out of the system, or if they're not getting their callbacks, or they're getting confusing information. So to those 200 plus people who just listened to a 4.5-hour legislative committee briefing, please, this isn't the end of the conversation. And please reach out to us. Please reach out to your elected officials. We are going to do our best, and we need to make this better. And we will get through this together. Thank you, Commissioner. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
With that, we're adjourned.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Sharon.